Hello guys and welcome back. I am SimUK. This is my MOTOGP 20 review from publishers and developers Milestone. Now if you don't know, Milestone were bought out by THQ Nordic in 2019 and things are looking decidedly more realistic. This year, experience all the thrills of the more complete than ever Managerial Career mode and enjoy new technical improvements and graphics. Customise your bike and suit and helmet. Compete against the MotoGP legends or challenge your friends online. So this game released on the 23rd of April 2020. It's $39.99 and I've got to say, I think this is the best MotoGP we have ever had. So graphically, MotoGP 20 looks okay, and I'm running on Ultra. The bikes are good, the light shimmers and the fantastic suspension animations I really like. The tracks, the cutscenes look a little bit bland for me, and I think they're exactly the same ones that we've seen year after year for years. There is literally nothing new here. The weather animations in game are completely random, and what I mean by that is it can fluctuate between two different qualifying times from absolutely tipping it down to completely bone dry. There's no progressive weather system here. I think that would be nice. What would also be nice would be if at some point in the race the weather would change. That would be fantastic. But unfortunately, none of that exists in MotoGP 20. What is new, and one thing I really do love about the game, is when the bike gets tipped over, you get switched to this onboard camera view. There's a few different ones available and it looks brilliant. You get the shake, the rattle, the signal gets disrupted. It just looks ace. There is some variation too, which is good because face planting in this game is more than likely to happen. Also, when you tip the bike, you see that there are scratches appearing on the fairings. Now, I'm not sure if these escalate the more damage you do or the more you crash, but they do have bike damage in the game now, so maybe there's something going on there. I don't think this is quite as good as I would like it, but it's good that it's there. Unfortunately, the cutscenes, when you're getting off your bike after a couple of laps whilst you're trying to qualify and you've scratched the bike up a little bit, when you get off the bike, it's back to being 100% perfect, which is a little bit immersion breaking. That's something I'd love to see them work on in the future, but it's not game breaking, it's just when you've got something that's as good as that, and then it just it gets undone almost immediately. Now I've got to say the lighting in game is a little bit questionable. Some people are going to like it more than others, but for me, the shadows in the game especially are very poor. It's more noticeable in the replays. The shadows there are so poor that it actually makes it look like the bike is floating at times. Honestly, I don't like it at all. Again, mostly noticeable when you're watching in replay, but there's some serious blur. You see it on the wheels and on the windshield and on the helmets predominantly. It really doesn't look good, but like I say, it is only really noticeable in replay mode, so I suppose you can sort of, look past that a bit. Now, character creation, I think, has had a nice lick of paint. Your own character options are actually, pretty good. The character faces are really quite lifelike, some more so than others, but pretty decent. And the well-known GP riders are also pretty decently represented as well. You can certainly recognise who is who. The rider cutscenes and animations, I think they're the same ones that we've had for years upon years, but they're pretty good. I definitely like them being in the game, it adds a lot to the immersion. On bike though, the throttle brake and gear animations do exist, but they are decidedly average. Especially the gear shifting with the foot, it just looks pretty awful if you ask me. I've also noticed this strange issue where the rider keeps looking either to the left or the right of the track. It's like his neck has been broken. It's a bug, I'm sure they'll fix it, but it is really off-putting, I've got to say. Now, bearing in mind that they bring out a new one of these games every year, and every year it's going to cost you 40 quid, why are the tracks still not laser scanned? Sure, they're a decent representation, but it's the same representation that I have seen year upon year. I think for this price, every year, we deserve a little bit more. So maybe in MotoGP 21, they should think about laser scanning the tracks and really bringing it up to standard. Because if they give us MotoGP as it is now, with an improvement on tracks and, graphics, if you like, then I think we're bounding along in a very, very nice direction. The game's stability is questionable. It has been released 2 months earlier than usual, but this game is certainly not polished to the nth degree. I've had at least 3 full crashes, a whole bunch of bugs, the one I mentioned earlier with the rider's head twisting all over the place. I've also had the speedo on the HUD completely disappear, so I've no idea what speed I'm doing. And the AI warm-up laps are just nothing short of hilarious. So the game has a max FPS limit of 120, but it is absolutely solid on my GTX 1080 Ti. It doesn't fluctuate at all, no matter how many bikes are on the track, whether the weather is clean or wet. We're hitting 120 and we're staying there. In terms of gameplay, simulation, physics, realism, I'm going to give this a massive thumbs up. I only ever race on maximum realism settings. Everything is set to realistic or maximum difficulty. At first, I found the new physics questionable. I wasn't sure if the braking was too harsh, and the way that the rear tyre was slipping about all over the place at the back, I thought that was a bug, possibly. Now, the reason why I was questioning the physics at first was because I simply wasn't expecting simulation level physics in a milestone game. But that is exactly what we have. And it is absolutely wonderful. It is really good, and it's really challenging. The rear wheel can be very squirrely in every corner, no matter what speed you're doing. To get around this requires really good throttle control, the right gearing and bike setup, and possibly the use of some assists. Now, I never used assists in the past, but now in this game with these physics, I can see that assists can really make you go fast around the track. Now, don't take that as read, because on some tracks, having less assists or no assists will actually make you go fast around the track. It depends on you as a rider, the bike setup that you have, and the track that you're on, and the conditions that you're racing in. This game now has so many factors that it's actually turning into something really exciting. For the first time ever, it feels like the changes I make really do matter to the bike. Not only do they matter to the bike, but they matter to me, because I feel the bike is handling differently, cornering differently, accelerating out of corners differently. It's brilliant. The braking is also way more realistic too. Way more realistic. You will be literally balancing the brake, the gear drops, and it's so delicate and so precise that mistakes will be made here. I cannot wait for esports in MotoGP 20, because for the first time ever, it's going to come down to small mistakes being made by the best players, and it's going to be skill level and consistency that wins out. Plus the bike setup and the configuration of the tyres, etc. There is a lot going on here. This is a real simulation game. There's going to be a real skill challenge. It now exists. Finally, we have a MotoGP game that is realistic. I love it. Now, I've mentioned it briefly already, the bike setup is now imperative for you to stay competitive. Having the right gearing and the right setup can give stability in corners, where else you'll be a bit squirrely. It will still require good throttle control though, even if you're using assists. There is a fine balance now between speed and stability. Track temperatures also play a factor with the wonderful tyre physics that they've added this year. You can see how power slide in the rear can really reduce grip on one side or the other, but in hotter locations the tyre compound also matters now. So soft in the heat will degrade really quickly, and in the cold, if you've got hard compounds on, they just won't grip enough and you won't be fast, you'll probably be unstable. Bike damage is another fantastic addition to the game. Slight collisions will result in debris flinging off all over the place from your bike, and damage will be incurred as a result. Little thing pops up telling you how much damage you've just incurred. Now, I'm not sure if the level of damage is quite right yet. Even the slightest knock, in my humble opinion, does a little bit too much damage. But ultimately, if you get too many knocks, your bike will fail completely. Prior to your bike completely shutting down though, you will also notice that the bike starts to veer off to one side or the other. Braking and acceleration will also become impaired, and the whole handling of the bike has just changed in an instant because of one small collision, or well, maybe one big collision. And with the all-new fuel technology management system added, the whole experience of MotoGP 20 has just gone next level. This is very nearly a hardcore simulator. Sadly, engineering and bike setup is an area that I feel is still lagging behind in terms of realism. I would love to see Project Cars 2 level of mechanics applied. For example, when you want to change the braking, there's only 2 braking option settings available. You've got like a 12mm and a 10mm, something like that. I don't think that's quite enough. I think there should be a lot more available to you. Perhaps as you progress through the career, more will become available, but I suspect that's all we're going to get. So, one long time annoyance with MotoGP games, and this is something I've complained about year upon year for the past, 5 years. Each time you start a quick flying lap, or you're going out, you're doing qualifying or whatever, when the AI takes control of the bike, it resets the traction control to full. It does keep your setup, so if you've changed your configuration, then it will retain that, but you'll only be able to see it, and you'll only be able to change it after the AI gives you back control of the bike. Now, that's really frustrating because that 20 seconds where the AI is riding the bike is the perfect time for you to have a look at your configuration and maybe make a few tweaks before taking over on the bike, and off you go. You have to bear in mind that with the fuel consumption system and the tyre wear system, if you take over control of the bike and you're trying to change the configuration for anti-wheelie settings or something like that, you miss the apex of your corner, you slide the bike off, you've now damaged the bike, you're going to have to do another lap all the way round in order to come back round and start a new lap. Your tyres are going to be more damaged, so you've just incurred all of that damage because of that one incident. And it's such an easy thing to change, and I have asked for 5 years for Milestone to have a look at this and sort it out. So it really frustrates me that it's still there. I mean, it really frustrates me. Another thing I'd like to see got rid of is the AI taking over when we go into the pits. I would love to be able to ride the bike up and pull into the pits on my own. Sure, I'd be bloody awful at it. I'd crash into the wall, I'd miss my stop point. It would be disastrous, but I'd like it. I'd like the option to do it, at least. So when you're doing a time attack and qualifying as well, the track marshals can be too harsh, very harsh. Maybe not too harsh, but very harsh. This can be adjusted in career, so they're a little bit more lenient, but invalid lap times sometimes occur when you haven't actually left the track. So I think there's 1 or 2 tiny little bugs there. I totally understand why they do it, because the urge to be the fastest in MotoGP does lead some people to take shortcuts and cheat. Now, not everybody's like that. In fact, most people aren't. But there are people out there who think that it's justified that they cheat so that they can get top spot. Maybe they think other people are cheating, which is why they're so fast. But I'll tell you what, I really like it. It is frustrating. I have nearly set wicked fast times, and I'm talking, top 10 times. But for 1 hair's width of my tyre going slightly off the track at the wrong time, and there goes my really fast time. Still, I will keep trying, and I am having so much fun trying to get the perfect lap. I really am. Now, collisions in MotoGP 20, in my humble opinion, are great. Not perfect, but great. They are very forgiving. You can hit and get away with a lot. Not always, but sometimes. But when it all goes wrong, it all goes wrong. And what else is nice is when you're off the track and you restart somewhere near where you ended up, which is great. I've already mentioned the scratches that appear down the side of the bike, but there's no visible damage, no debris, no missing fairings, no things like that. It would be nice if certain parts of the bike could get damaged and that wipes you out, even though it's only your first crash. This is only on hardcore setting, of course. I did once think that the throttle had been ripped off the bike, but it turns out that in the replay it simply clipped through the track. So this game is fun, and it's fun because it's challenging, and it's challenging because it's realistic. Therefore, you can get many, many hours of fun just lapping, let alone jumping into the career or going online and playing multiplayer. This game has got bags and bags of fun. Learning how to slow the bike down and handle it in corners is going to be hard because you don't have great fidelity on a controller. You really don't. I had to reconfigure my controller, and that helped a little bit. That stopped 50% of my braking appearing to be 100%. But yeah, I think it would be nice if in the settings we could change the sensitivity of that somehow. But yeah, it's going to take time. It's going to be difficult. Learning how to slow the bike down and handle it correctly in corners is going to be hard because it is now realistic, and I really, really love that. I am so happy to be learning each track all over again. Now, for the hardcore players, those who literally do nothing else, the AI are simply not going to be tough enough. One of my favourite YouTubers, someone I always go and watch play MotoGP games, is Robbo46. He's one of my favourite YouTubers. He absolutely creams the AI when he's at 120% difficulty. I'm not entirely sure that he's running at 100% maximum settings though. I am at least a second off the pace personally, but worse still, I am inconsistent, and it is that is actually causing me to be lagging behind. I'm trying to go faster and faster, but I'm just not smooth enough on the track. Now, being smooth on the track really means a huge amount. Without that, you're not going to be fast. So personally, I like the AI. They're not perfect, but the new neural AI system does seem to have made a difference. Apparently they react to their surroundings. I'm not entirely sure that I've seen that, but they are trying to manage their tyre wear and fuel, and I think maybe that's impacting on their speed. Now, for me, 100% is basically the fastest I can go. I can keep up with 100%, and I race hard, and if I was smoother, if I was more consistent, I think I could win against them. But 120% is beyond my limits at the moment. Players like Robbo46, 120% isn't enough. So I do think that the AI needs a bit more work, but I've got to say, overall, I think they're pretty fine. I've had a couple of people dive bomb inside me, but, you know, and so far, nobody's hit me and taken me out by doing that, unless I'm coming across the track. I don't know. It's difficult to say, but, you know, I think more could be done with the AI, because at the moment, it doesn't feel 100% right. So there's no tutorial in the game, none at all, but Moto 3 and Moto 2 are much slower, and they kind of act like a tutorial. There also are guides that you can put on, you can put auto braking and stuff like that, so it's not a tutorial, but there are loads of assists, and I'm not talking about the on-bike assists, I'm talking about in-game assists that can really help new players to go around a track. Now, my 7-year-old daughter has taken over, and she was racing with Rossi, and I only let her run around in first gear, but she was starting to get the hang of it really quite quickly. So I think anybody can get the hang of this game if you just give it time and respect it. That's the key thing. you have to respect the corner, you have to respect the bike. And each of the bikes are different, they all handle differently, and when you change and configure the settings of the bike, it will handle even more differently still. So it's really great. There's also the Red Bull tiered event is missing. Now I believe that's being added later, but I've no confirmation of that, I've just heard it be said. So the game modes include Career with the Management Career. There's no Red Bull season as I mentioned, so you're going to have to start off in Moto 3. Now what you do in the Career is you have employees, you manage the finances, and there's lots of test and development and stuff to make your bike faster. I'm not 100% wholeheartedly sold on the Career. It feels a little bit too arcadey for my personal taste, but I tell you what, it is nice that it's there. This is something that MotoGP brought in ages ago, I mean years back, 16, 17, something like that. And everybody was like, wow, this is great, I really love it. So promptly the next year they took it out because Milestone, complete morons apparently. But it's back and it's better than it was. In fact, it's really quite good. It's not as hardcore sim for me. Now you've also got something called Daily Challenge in like historic mode. And basically they put up these 3 challenges each day, one easy, one medium, one hard. And depending on which level of difficulty you complete, you can do one or all of them, you get these credits. The credits allow you to buy one of 3 unlockable items. Now it's not loot boxes, you can pick between the 3, and sometimes if you earn enough you can buy all 3. So it's just a thing to get you to come back and something for you to unlock and something for you to engage in. It's pretty good, it's okay. It doesn't really tick my box, I'll be honest. But yeah, it's a feature, it's nice, it's okay. Obviously we've got multiplayer. I tried to get in a multiplayer session the other night. There were about 5 up there, each one had about between 3 and 8 players. To be honest with you, I couldn't get in any of them, and I didn't really want to start my own. I don't have any friends, I don't have any friends who play MotoGP 20 especially, so I'm a bit of... it's difficult for me to find a multiplayer session. Maybe I should try and hook up with Robbo46 at some point, and maybe he can give me some tutorials and sort out my racing line. But yeah, multiplayer exists. I haven't heard anything bad. I'm sure there are bugs. There always are. And with the game in its current state, I'm sure there's probably more than usual. But multiplayer does exist in the game. You've also got quick mode, which is basically allows you to do hot laps, time trials, whatever you want to call it. And there's leaderboards, which basically tracks everybody's fastest time. Now you can filter that by your friends, you can look at yourself, and you can check out the top spot. What's really cool, and it's been there for a while, is the ability to download any of the online racing times ghosts. That way you can follow them around the track and you can see just where they're going so much faster than you. It's not going to tell you what setup they've got, it's not going to help you go faster, but at least you can see where there are faster lines and perhaps later braking points available to you. Now I did mention how setups are so important, and one of the things that really frustrates me about the setups is when you save a setup, you cannot name it at all. So if you're working on a hot lap and you're sorting out your time trials and you're getting faster, you try something different and it doesn't work out, that something different doesn't work out, and you come back to it a day or 2 later, you look at your available bike setups and they're all called exactly the same thing. They don't have any dates on them, there's nothing there to discrepance one from the other. I mean, I personally might actually want to have a qualifying setup and a race setup. Because when you're qualifying, you're flat out. But when you're racing, you're trying to manage your tyres, you're trying to manage your fuel consumption, you're certainly trying not to come off the track. So, yeah, I think more needs to be done with regards to saving your setups. I mean, at the very least, just let us name it whatever we want instead of forcing it upon us. Now, the audio in-game, I think, is pretty poor overall. The ambient immersion is lacking. It's barely existent, to be honest with you. Far more could and should be done here. One thing I'd like to see, now you can correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes when I'm trying to change down a gear, you miss a gear because you're going too fast or whatever reason. You just cannot change down a gear quick enough. Now you might notice it the first time and try and drop that gear again. 99 times out of 100 that'll work fine. But when it doesn't work, you won't realise because there's no audible indication that you have dropped a gear, like, you know, the mechanical gear change clunk. Now I don't know if these new gears actually make that sound or not, but I would really like something, some sort of audible indication that I have dropped a gear. Yes, I know gear change, audible, yes, but sometimes you just don't notice it. You really cannot tell. Something else I've noticed, when you have a collision, there's barely any, if any, audio at all. I haven't heard any skidding sounds, there's no gear crunching. Far more could and should be done, and with the gear crunching that would be perfect for what I just said with the gear changing issue. If I try and change a gear and it doesn't go in, I'd like some sort of audible feedback so that I know. As far as voice acting goes, there's no actual commentary. Wouldn't it be great if on the replay you could have commentary? That would be wonderful. But instead we've just got the same old intros. I think we deserve more, to be honest with you. A bit of commentary perhaps would be epic, even if it was only in the replay. But just new stuff, maybe another person, maybe they're having a conversation about the career, that would be great. Now I'm not really bashing MotoGP 20 because what they have delivered is fantastic and I'm so glad they've done that. What I'm thinking about now is 21, 22, 23. These are the things that are going to have to change. They can't just release the same game with all the new riders and new skins for the bikes, etc., and expect us to still pay 40 quid for it. I think they need to really improve the game, and this is something, an area that hasn't been looked at or changed for 5-6 years. I think it's time. Now the engine sounds, in contrast, I think are actually a little bit better than they were in 19. They just sound a bit more throaty, a bit more but again, you know, there's no skidding, there's no brake squeal, there's a whole bunch of extra audio that could be added to make it more realistic. Now one of the options in-game is wind sound, and I'll be honest with you, TT Isle of Man 2 does it better, a lot better. So MotoGP, there's a lot of room for improvement in terms of audio. Now the UI in-game looks pretty good, but as a UI specialist, or, you know, I went to university and trained in UI, I find it quite annoying that it's inconsistent. And what I mean by that is that the A button is select and the B button is back. Pretty standard stuff, right? Except for in MotoGP 20 when A is actually back and B is play again. This lack of consistency is, I mean, it's a small thing, but my god does it annoy me. It's one of those bugbears that I just cannot stand. Now key binding in this game is pretty good. It's not as bind free as TT Isle of Man 2, but it's more traditional and you can change everything. You've got controller and keyboard control settings, so you can swap all your brakes and your controls round. I've got look back to be my left thumbstick, so L3, and I've got my rear brake on R1. So for me that just works better. The character creation I think is pretty good. There's only a handful of faces, I think about 15, something like that, but they do look more realistic. Not that you ever really see their faces much. In Career it is plastered on the side of the thing there, and obviously when you're on the podium or whatever, not that I've ever made it to the podium. But yeah, I mean there's stuff there. It's better. I think the character creation is better. Obviously you can create your own bum stickers and your own helmets and your own numbers and your own decals for the bike. That's all pretty cool. You can also download other people's when they upload it to share. So I mean that's pretty awesome. But when you look at the number of, I think there's 6 gloves that are available, and to me they all look exactly the same. Basically all you can do is just accentuate them with a bit of colour. More could definitely be done there, couldn't it? A lot more could be done, but hey, it is what it is and it works pretty well. Now there is a DLC that's available on release day. That does kind of piss me off. It's a historical pack actually, and I don't know if it's the things that you can unlock by doing the daily challenges. Maybe you can just buy them outright and then you don't have to do the daily challenges. If that's what it is, then okay, maybe I can stomach that and say fair enough, you know, it's just for people that don't want to do the daily challenges but do want the historical bike stuff. Then okay, I can work with that. But the whole thing about having DLC on release day, I think it's, I don't know, it doesn't sit well with me. That's all I'm saying. So the price, same as it always is, $39.99. This time round I actually think it's worth that money. Hours of play available, endless to the point where next year they're going to bring out another one. So you've got about a year. So is £40 a year a good price? I don't know. Normally, not, no. If you can get this game a bit cheaper, good on you. But I would actually say, for the first time ever, $39.99, I actually think it's worth the investment this time round. I might be less encouraged to buy MotoGP 21 because 20 is so good, but we'll see what they're going to do with 21. I've given some ideas and suggestions in this review. If they start delivering on those things, I'll probably buy into that as well. Part of me does wish that MotoGP wouldn't release one every year like FIFA, but rather go down the MotoGP 3, MotoGP 4. Instead of one every year, just get one, like take MotoGP 20, and just really work on it until it's the best it can be. And then when they've reached that point, get some DLCs out. Wouldn't you rather pay £5-10 a year for a new DLC that brings all of the riders and bikes and tracks and stuff up to a new standard? And maybe they could, introduce other tracks. Maybe we could expand. Perhaps you could have a test track, something like that. I'd much rather invest in stuff like that and build my game up and make it bigger and better whilst they're still developing it and improving it, rather than just this constant buying a new version of the same old thing with slight variations. I mean, this time round it's not as bad as it usually is, because actually MotoGP 20 is by far the best MotoGP that I've ever seen. So this time round it's actually worth the money. But is it going to be this much better in 21? I don't know, that's the problem. Still, as far as I'm concerned, this one is an absolute massive thumbs up. Just the experience of the bike, it feels so good. Oh my god, it is so good, and I think you're going to love it. If you've been waiting and waiting and waiting for a realistic MotoGP game, hallelujah, hallelujah. Here it is, boys and girls. Enjoy, hit that like button, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, I don't know, give your nan a hug, do something cool. This game is awesome. Thanks for watching. Take care. Goodbye for now.